not that long ago in my small group, someone who is not even a member of the church has just been coming to the small group whenever we meet. He expressed, guys, I know that my spiritual life is not what it needs to be. And he had a very vulnerable moment with us. And in part, that was made possible by the trust and the safety that he felt in that space. And, realizing that, I reached out to him, and what I came to realize was that he did not have a strong network of Christians around him, and we're working on building that now. But if he had not opened up in that moment, then I couldn't have helped him, and none of us could have. Mm-hmm. If you want to be edified, you first have to admit that you are in need. So you have to confess. You have to allow people to hold you to a standard. And you have to let them know when stuff is going on. And we know that it's going on.
Yeah.
We all have stuff. We all have problems that we deal with.
And let's talk from a practical standpoint what this looks like. Because if you're just going to the 1 hour or so worship service, where you have a song service or a worship time with music, and then you have a sermon, if you walk into that and you walk out and go back home, you're not going to get what we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about doesn't happen in that. Hopefully in a minute we'll talk about what should happen during that time, because that is a very important time that we should be, heavily engaged during that time. But in order to do what we're talking about at the moment, you have to meet in smaller groups. You call it Sunday school, call it small group, call it life group, whatever name you put on. It's a group of people getting together to discuss spiritual things. Now, I've been in church all my life, and I can tell you, just because you gather with a small group of people doesn't mean you're going to get what we're talking about.
Right.
Because, oftentimes there's a lot of churchiness in those times when we all know what the church answer is, and we're giving the church answer, but we're not going deeper. And here is my admonition or encouragement to people. Be the one who opens the door to that. Because it takes one person to say, hey guys, I don't understand what this is talking about. I hear what they're reading right here, but this is troubling me for this reason. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, I've really struggled this week with this sin. Hey, one day this week I went off and I was extremely disrespectful to my wife or to my boss, or, I had a road rage. Whatever it is, whatever failure you may have had, when you share that, it swings open the door for other people to say, you know what, I'm struggling with that too. And so somebody has to be bold enough to open that door.
Yes.
And I can tell you, when you start doing this, some people are going to push back a little bit because they don't want to let you into their lives. What I would say is, if you will continue to be vulnerable and to share honestly, a level of trust will be built where other people begin to open up. But somebody has to do it. Why not? Why shouldn't it be you? Somebody's got to do it.
Right. Yeah. Once again, not that long ago, I was having a struggle with assurance of salvation, and the Lord was really humbling me, because up until that point in my life, I had always thought of struggles with assurance of salvation as something that less mature Christians experienced. Mm-hmm. And here I was experiencing it myself. And I was on the way with Courtney to our small group, and I thought, I'm going to have to tell them about this, aren't I? And I didn't want to, mm-hmm. because I was embarrassed. But, by the Lord's grace, I did. And we didn't end up talking about our pre-planned program that night. Usually we talk about the preceding sermon. Instead, we just talked about salvation and justification and what all that means. In those moments where you know that you have something that you need help with, you need encouragement, you need counsel, but you don't want to let others in. You just have to decide what kind of small group do I want to be in? Do I want to be in a small group where I show up for an hour and we all posture for each other for an hour, and then I go home and maybe we can talk about something that interests us when we're not in the serious time? Or do I want to have a small group where when I go, I walk away encouraged, more capable of fighting this spiritual war and helping others to do the same, encouraging them, helping them grow stronger in their own capacity to wage war spiritually. And you just have to make that determination beforehand. And if you have to be the first one to take that plunge, then so be it.
Yeah, I think there's another piece to that too, and that's being willing to challenge other people. And this is probably even more difficult than being vulnerable. But if you're in a small group, and I'll just use this as an example because it's a recent example from my own experience. You're in a small group and someone says, "Hey, did y'all watch this particular TV show?" Okay, well, in your mind, you're thinking, I would never watch that show because I know the content of that show and I don't want to expose myself to that. Okay, so here you are, you got somebody else responds, "Oh yeah, I watched that, I've been looking forward to seeing that." And so you got these two people that are watching this. You are sitting there thinking, should we be watching that? Now, you have an option here. Keep your mouth shut, let them finish their conversation, and let's just go ahead and talk about whatever the topic is that night. Or you can say, "Guys, why do y'all watch that? What are you getting from that? How is that show impacting your spiritual life?" Yeah. It's not that you speak up and say, "Y'all a bunch of heathens." I would never watch that show because I am holier than thou.
Right.
I mean, I think we don't do it because we're scared that's how it's going to come across. But we can broach the subject by saying, I don't watch that. I've never watched that, or I watched it one time and it troubled me. How do y'all feel about the content that we take in? Okay, now you've started a conversation. It doesn't have to be a conversation that is an indictment. It can just be an open door to have that conversation. And I believe that's the way deeper relationships are built. And it's the way we get to spiritual things that really matter in our lives and cause us to look at how we're living. I can tell you, we all have blind spots, and it's through those conversations where people challenge me on things that I felt like, I had known all my life, I had done a particular way, and they're like, "Well, the scripture says this. Have you ever thought about that?" And it hits you, So don't be scared to start those conversations.
Right. Proverbs has a lot to say about the rebuke of a friend and how dear that is and how it is an expression of love. I would also caution people that the Bible also teaches us to take the log out of our own eye before we cast the speck out of another's eye. When you do cast the log out and you go through that process, you can then see clearly, as the word says, to cast the speck. And this is probably another reason that we are not so quick to challenge others, because we know that we are opening ourselves up to the same sort of challenge, and perhaps we don't want that.